I'm delighted to be here with Shino John, who's the Associate Vice President of Strategic Growth and International Development at Rutgers University. I've known Shino, I think, for 12 plus years, and we usually see each other in a United lounge somewhere in an airport around the country. But really great to see you. I'm glad you could be here. So
Good to be here, Lee.
like to
Always.
like to ask Shino some questions. Let's start off with the financial situation for a lot of schools right now is incredibly stressed. We see a school closing almost once a week right now. And these are generally smaller schools, but most of the schools that we work with are experiencing heavy financial stress, whether they're public or private. Can you talk about your thoughts around that financial model and
Sure.
how it might change or how it needs to change?
So I think, Lee, what we're seeing happening, like never before, is that the accrediting bodies, the regional accrediting bodies, are taking a closer look at what is happening under the financial hood of our institutions. They're looking at all of the key performance indicators. They're trying to assess how much is in the bank, how quickly are higher education institutions tapping into creditor to credit to get through the difficult summer months. They're looking at all of the financial data as opposed to what their role has historically been. So that's a shift. And as they begin to look under the hood of these institutions, they're seeing causes for concern. Are stipends being paid out in a timely manner? Are all of these historically regulated steps being followed at institutions? And we're finding that it may not necessarily be. And as they look closer and closer, they're finding these irregularities and these challenges. And you're seeing regional accrediting bodies begin to indicate you have to show cost. They're indicating that these are the challenges and we need to know what is happening because we have a sense of responsibility to ensure that if an institution is on the precipice of closing, right, that they have the resources for a teach out, that they have the resources to ensure that they can properly transition their current portfolio of students and make sure that it's an orderly process that they're following. Now, you have a high number of smaller institutions that are more affected because they don't have the same borrowing power that the larger institutions do. Is that equitable? I don't know that I can answer that question for you in this moment, but I would say that these smaller institutions that are incredibly vulnerable going through the original reaccreditation, when they're up for reaccreditation, that's when it gets the deeper look under the hood. You have the auditor's report. You're looking at those audits. Even with a clean audit, it may not get through the regulatory hurdles within regional accreditation. So all of those challenges combined are creating structural problems for smaller institutions. The larger institutions are dealing with, you know, for us at Rutgers, our fringe rates have gone over 80%.
Your what?
Our fringe rates
Yep.
for carrying employees have gone over 80%. So can you imagine on every dollar? So continuing education,
Yep.
professional education schools,
Yep.
we pay for these benefits, right? So on every dollar, that's over 80 cents that has to go towards benefits to carry that individual. That is
So
a very
basically
difficult
2x on their salary.
Yeah, almost 2x on their
Yep.
salary.
Yep.
That model for us isn't sustainable long term.
Right.
And institutions across the country are facing these types of structural deficits. They are there and they are growing year over year until we rethink the financial model of how we are operating as institutions.
It's interesting. I talk to people all the time. I'll call it in the real world, non higher ed people, and they can't comprehend how the cost of higher ed, and yet they have very little understanding of how expensive it is to run an institution. Like you said, we have smaller schools closing at the rate of once a week right now, and I've been interested and talked about this about a year ago. Wouldn't it be interesting if there was a clear guidance on a pathway? We know how a company gets acquired or merges. We know there's procedures on how to do that before it gets into a critical state. Any thoughts on how higher ed could potentially have someone raise their hand for a strategic relationship a little bit sooner than
Right.
they're about to close?
One of the awesome models I think here back in the day when everyone was when for-profit sectors were moving into higher education, right? So we had a lot of this. India had opened up their higher education sector, and for a $12 million bond, an institution can open up their doors in India and begin to offer. So you had a lot of the for-profit sector coming in. And the questions during that period of time were, what is the value of accreditation? And at that time, the number that
$10
everyone
million.
$10 million.
Yeah, I remember it.
Right?
I remember it. Yeah.
What is the
It was
value
$10 million
of regional
Yep.
accreditation? How long does it take to get there? It takes
Yep.
5 to 10 years to get there.
Yep.
This is the amount of resources it takes. So that is the value of the accreditation. So if an institution has accreditation, has regional accreditation, X number of degrees, this is their value. So what is the right partner for them, and what is the model for them to go? I think that's the hands up. Hey, whether it's whatever their local affiliation is, their student population, their alumni base, who are they connected with, what is their service, what remember, everyone's looking at higher education. The language that we use is that higher education is a business. Higher education is not a business. Businesses pay taxes, right? There are leaders that have run higher education as businesses, but to be clear, businesses, right? And my family has businesses. Those businesses pay taxes. Higher education has the permission of the United States government
to not pay tax.
To survive all, and we're talking about our largest institutions in the country and our smallest. Without the federal subsidy of loans that provide for the education of these students, these institutions don't survive. Princeton's probably one of the few that would be okay because they are small and they have the largest endowment, right? Compared to their size. That institution could pay for everyone to go to school if no one brought a single dollar from anywhere else. But that's probably one of the few resourced models that works in this setting. But when we're talking about the vast majority of institutions, students' abilities to get loan money is what's driving this financial model. And then several years ago, this was one of the statements that we had made in the leadership community. It's that students are going to debt to go to colleges, to go to college. Colleges are going into debt to be colleges. The only one that's making any money in the midst of the whole situation
Loan providers.
is the bank.
Yeah.
Because the model is so challenging, right? And how do we navigate this moment? Ensure one of the transformative moments for me, Lee, I will never forget this day. I was a very young vice president of a private institution, 25 years old, and the board, the chairman of the board was the vice president for Marriott Global, and he was the one that supported my nomination. The president was a mentor and leader to me. On my first day at the executive committee, that's the vice presidents of the institution. So I was vice president for development. I walk into the executive committee meeting. They handed out a sheet of paper, had all the list of the graduating students of the institution, and it had how much they were carrying in loans at graduation. I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated.
Because then you were going to go out and ask them for donations.
Yeah. It wasn't so development at that institution.
Right.
It didn't just mean philanthropy. It meant how do you build the institution? I was devastated because how do we send individuals into the world? And this was a faith-based institution, and it was producing pastors, ministers, leaders to serve the community service-oriented social sector workers, right?
Right.
How do you send social sector workers that are going to serve the community and serve our society with $100,000 in loans that they needed to navigate their university
they can't
experience?
repay. Yeah.
That they can't repay, or they will not be able to do what they intended to do, right? What they were so for that decision is so complicated for a young. Think of the values around that decision for a young person to stand up and say, I want to be a social worker, I want to be a minister, I want to be a missionary, I want to develop irrigation systems in rural regions of the world that don't have access to water. I want to serve our society, our people, our community. That decision is commendable, it is noble, it is transformative, it is life-giving, right? Those are our champions for the future, right? And as institutions, and in that moment, I looked at what was our responsibility to the young person that trusted us with their passion and with their vision for the future, a vision of transforming other people's lives. That was the pain, right? It was that I felt, wow, what's my role as a leader in the mix of this moment? How do we ensure that students that come to us with that type of a dream to serve society, a dream to be in public service, to advance the cause for those who have been left behind?
So some states have differentials in terms of how they subsidize some of their public institutions. So if you are going to be an educator or something like that in certain states, you get a greater degree of subsidy. We have, nearing $2 trillion in student debt out there.
Yes.
What are some of your thoughts about how that gets mitigated? One where I think the analogy I heard at the panel, which was awesome, we're still, the tanker's still spilling oil, and yet we're trying to clean up the shore.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant. The house is still on fire, and we're trying to renovate. So, what are some of your thoughts on how to address that?
Right.
So, you just mentioned, we're at 2x almost for employee costs in terms of 2x of their salary with benefits and so forth. It's expensive to run an institution. I'll call it the business model isn't working. What are some of your thoughts?
Right. So let me share with you a very personal conversation that we had. So I'm on the board of a private college based out of Newark, and it serves an incredible community in the city of Newark and the surrounding regions. An HSI institution doing transformative work. So several years ago, we're talking about the notion of free tuition, right? And so most of your viewers will know free tuition doesn't mean it's free. It means that tuition has been discounted down to whatever the aid of that state and the federal aid components provide, right? So if NJ Tag provides 12K and federal is, you've now discounted tuition down to that component, and it is free to the student because the aid subsidies provide that component. And I remember the conversation with the board. How could we provide free tuition for everyone? And the president is a mentor to me, and he was the president that brought me in at 25 to be VP of development. This is a different institution and many years later, but I remember looking to him, and he said, if we don't figure out how to do this, we don't exist. If we don't fundamentally change our view in higher education of how we are running our operations, right? How we are leading, what we are charging, what we are putting on students, we don't survive. Whether you're a smaller institution or a larger institution, this is the challenge of our moment. We could make 100 decisions in every direction. But the first one, it says, right? If states are providing this at their public institutions, right? You have New York and New Jersey have two models where we're moving in that direction. Many other states are doing something similar. They're saying this should be the model, right? We have to make it affordable and accessible to these individuals. And between that and the demographic shift, the squeeze is only becoming more prevalent for all these institutions. So I didn't have an answer for you, but I'm saying that there is a responsibility on every higher education leader, every sitting president of an institution, and every individual that aspires to be a president, how to rethink the financial model by which these institutions survive, right? We're not talking about eliminating structural deficits. We're talking about rethinking what we are asking for in terms of financial commitments from this next generation of students to ensure our solvency.
What are some of the changes that need to happen then? Is it leveraging AI, therefore fewer staff? What is the?
It's going to be a little bit of all of that, right? So I would say when we were working on a project in India years ago, when India was deregulating its higher education sector, It was such an incredible model. 600 million people under the age of 25, right? Everybody needs a job. Everybody needs to provide for their sustenance, for their future. We are at the precipice of something so significant, and we've heard it multiple times in the course of today at Upstia, right? That 2022, November 2022, is the pivotal moment. We are going to see a transformation of the workforce. We are going to come to a place in our country where we have hundreds of millions of individuals under the age of 25. Not everyone is going to have the ability to get a seat at a university in a traditional degree program, but every single one of those individuals needs a way to provide for their sustenance
and their family.
and if they choose to have a family, to provide for their family. Everyone needs that. Higher education is poised to be the partner to make that reality true for all of us, right? But if we don't, someone else will move us out of the way and step into that gap. They will move because this train is going to leave the station.
This train is left. Yeah.
One way or another, this problem has to be solved because we have to produce talent that is needed. And so my family, we have a home in we live in New Jersey, just adjacent to the Rutgers University campus. We also have a home in South Dakota, Rapid City. Every summer we go to Rapid City, South Dakota. We have a home there, but we stay on a family ranch on the backside of Mount Rushmore, right? The members of that community, I would assure you, and the members of our community in Franklin Township, New Jersey, a vast majority of those individuals are not asking the question of how I retool myself to get my next job.
Right.
They are not working with that purpose. Right. They are working so that they can live their lives.
Current life, right.
They can enjoy their family. They could sit down and watch a baseball game with their kid. I'm working on this paper with a colleague, a brilliant colleague at our Blostein School, and he's allowed me to join him in this, the ethics around artificial intelligence, what this learning model creates and the complexities around it. But we are at this precipice, right, of higher education looking out, and we will have well into the 100 million people under the age of 25 that we are now not the 600 million people across the ocean, right? We will look at them at home, and they will need a pathway to the future. Either higher education is carving that path on every level, not just degree programs, the micro program, every level of that program. How do we make it so that you can enjoy the life you envisaged? How can we help you find happiness and pursue it without this consuming your journey in your life, right? I think it's an incredible opportunity, like never before, for us to be back at the forefront of leading society to a new future.
I think higher ed is still one of our greatest country's exports. And it's at risk, but yes, it's definitely one of our greatest exports. Closing comments. Any closing comments besides the very aspirational carve a path for 700 million plus people?
Yeah.
Because there's other countries besides India and US that have the similar kind of thing going on too. So
yeah. So I was in Botswana in Southern Africa recently, and it was so incredible. So let me just share this that leads to this. I studied. I'm a seminary graduate. Studied Hebrew, studied Greek, learned read and write. Traveled and did my graduate work in Israel on site at the tail end of my degree. 98 credit graduate degree for a master's. Right? It's just insane. I remember traveling to Nigeria in Lagos, and they had asked me this. So if you teach in Lagos, you're from America, you're white. So they introduced me as the white professor from America. I'm still recovering from that, but anyway. So they said, we have 500 leaders, faith-based leaders here, and they have asked that you please read their scriptures in Hebrew for them. I didn't understand the request, right? Because they won't understand. If I read it to them, they're not going to understand what I'm saying. And I had studied a little bit of Yoruba, enough to translate some of it, but not enough to make this make sense. And they said, please indulge us. Just read the Hebrew scriptures for us. And so I remember doing it. So 500 are in the room. And I stand there, the white professor from America, right? I opened up the Hebrew scriptures. I had a copy. I traveled with it, right? Because I spent so much. It's a beautiful and incredible language. It was one of the most challenging things to learn, right? So I'm reading through, and I'm watching at this community of 500 leaders, right? Each one representing a community, right, in the region. Many of them fell to their feet. Some of them were weeping. And then after it was over, I looked at the leader and I said, what? I don't understand. They can't understand what I'm saying. And they said, do you know what it's like to spend your entire life studying something, but never to have had the opportunity to hear it in its original form? He's like, you couldn't imagine what it's like because you had the education and the resources available to you to study it and hear it its original form. But these leaders, some of them have been doing this for over 50 years. And this is the first time that someone stood before them and read to them in its original form what they've been studying their entire lives. The reason I want to close with this, right, is because American universities and our system of education has something to offer the world, not just in the hard sciences and not just in the classics, but in how we have shaped our education system. We have things to offer the global community in every country, in every community, and in every area. And it can be a season of incredible transformation.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Lee.
Great to see you.
Always appreciate
Yeah.
you, man.
Yeah.